to go.
Recording.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the March 28th, 2016 Litchfield Board of Selectmen meeting. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Mr. Brown, you could lead us. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have just come out of a non-public session, and will now conduct our regular business. First order of business is the consent calendar. We have in the consent calendar, not consent calendar.
Agenda.
Consent agenda items. The minutes of March 14th, 2016. Accounts payable manifest for March 22nd of $21,356.13, and of March 29th of 2016 of $104,045.95. Payroll manifests for 3/24/16 of $48,174.63, and of 3/31/16 of $48,743.11. Two abatements, denials, an intent to cut, a veteran's tax credit, an elderly tax exemption, the approval of the union contract as was voted by the citizens during the town elections, committee appointments for Mosquito Control District of Mr. John Latchiter, Planning Board for Mr. Jason Garrett, Recreation Commission appointments for Andrew Collins and Elizabeth Darling, Zoning Board of Adjustment appointments for Richard Riley Jr. and Albert Gibo, Conservation Commission appointments of Sharon Jones and Roger St. Laurent Jr., Cable Advisory Committee appointments of Russell Blanchette, Treasurer Sharon Harding Reed, Deputy Treasurer Deborah Hogenkamp, and we also have the Treasurer's Delegation of Authority for Deposit of Funds for Claire Croteau, Teresa Briand, and Patricia Textor. Is there any items on the consent agenda that the board members wish to remove? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
We have a motion by Selectman Lemire, seconded by Selectman Brunel. Debate or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 5-0-0. Are there any items that the board wishes to have under other business?
None from me.
Hearing none, we'll move on then. Public input will be approximately sometime after 6:30. First item on the business agenda will be the library trustee alternate appointment interview for Donna Ferguson. So if you can come up front, please.
Sure. We sit here?
Yep.
How are you, Donna?
I'm fine, how are you? Yeah, how you doing?
Do you
Good.
have, we have it on the side, library trustee alternate. So why is it that you'd like to be an alternate for the library?
Well, for years I was, a while ago, when my kids were in school, we were involved in the town. We did lots of things, and then, they moved on to college, and so I kind of stepped back. And just recently, about a year and a half ago, I got involved with the library book club, the monthly book club, and I really like that. So I thought this is a good way to give back to the town, and as an alternate, learn a little bit about the process.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel you have the time to dedicate to that?
I do, yeah.
Okay. How often do the library trustees meet? Was it once a month, or?
I believe it's once a month. I think it's the second Monday of the month, yeah.
They don't invite us.
Conflicts without meeting.
Yeah, I think it does, right?
It's actually some,
And that's a good move on
Probably.
your part, to have it the same time as we do.
Okay. Other questions from members of the board?
Mr. Chairman, knowing Ms. Ferguson, I'm certainly confident that she'll be able to adequately fulfill all the duties, and I would move that board appoint Donna Ferguson as alternate library trustee.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Selectman Lemire, a second by Selectman Perry. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 500. So what'll have to happen is we're gonna have to put together the appointment paperwork on that, and I think it gets signed by,
It might be in the packet.
is it in the
I
packet?
think it was,
You're gonna have to get sworn in by Terry Briand anyway, so
Right.
we'll just check and make sure it's in here. Library trustee alternate, there you go.
It's not right.
Oh, right.
So we're gonna have to have it made up and re-signed next meeting.
It's got a
Yeah,
wrong first name.
It says Conna, C-O-N-N-A,
Does it
instead
really?
of Donna.
Oh.
Somebody got the
Oh, little fat finger there.
little fat finger, yeah. So we'll get it fixed up.
Okay.
And it should be at Terry's office.
So I don't have to come back here to sign, I can just go there to sign, okay,
You
perfect.
have to go in, Terry will ask you to raise your right hand and swear.
Okay, and I can coordinate that time with her.
When's your next meeting?
Be next.
It's the second Monday of the month. Right now, right, 2 weeks.
So-
All right, so after next Monday, you'll be able to get done.
Yeah,
Because they'll redo the paperwork, we'll sign it next Monday with all our paperwork.
Okay, so sometime next week.
yeah.
Okay,
if That
perfect.
works for you.
Yeah, and I can just call her and coordinate that with her?
Yep.
All right, perfect, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for volunteering.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll keep that one separate.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
This one's gonna be
Okay,
separate.
next item on the agenda is Great Thicket National Wildlife Refuge. Mr. Bill Peterson.
Best way for me to go back and forth through that.
You
Would
can
you like me just to motion
just
you?
look at me and I'll hit the arrows for you.
Okay.
Or you can make a click-click sound and he'll,
Snap the fingers.
so if you can introduce yourself, Mr. Peterson, a little bit, please have a seat and
Thank you. I'm Bill Peterson. I'm the manager of Great Bay National Wildlife Refuge and Wapak National Wildlife Refuges in New Hampshire. Wapak is near Nashua. And I'm also based at Parker River National Wildlife Refuge, where I'm the manager in Newburyport. And the reason I'm here today is to talk to you about the draft land protection plan for the Great Thicket National Wildlife Refuge. We're in the middle of the public comment period, and I appreciate you inviting me to come talk and tell you a little bit about it. So for starters, just to make sure we're on the same page for what I mean when I'm referring to a thicket, that is both young forest that's recently been cut or is regenerating, so young maple birch forest, or also around here wet areas, the shrub thickets that you find around swamps. And they've declined drastically throughout New England. We've lost about 90% of the former thicket, that early succession habitat area. And if you see the largest dotted line, that's the maximum extent of range for the New England cottontail, which, because it's so charismatic, has really been the symbol of early successional habitat in New England. Originally, most of our shrublands were along the coasts and up the rivers, and then after tornadoes, big events as the forest was regenerating. But most of that has now been lost, and in general, the red circle areas are the only places where New England cottontails are left, but they used to extend far up into northwestern Vermont. Oh, yeah.
There, you can go ahead.
Yeah, most of the loss has been through forests just growing up and regenerating into mature forest. And there are a lot of other animals that are struggling because of it, not just New England cottontails. We have the woodcock, the blue-winged warbler, and even monarchs, some of those that like early fields. So looking at woodcock is a good example because they're hunted. We have fairly detailed surveys for them. They've declined throughout the Northeast by 56% since the late 60s.
now, are those still, if you don't mind me asking the question, there's still a season on woodcock?
Yes, they're still hunted, shorter seasons, reduced bag limits. But the issue with declining woodcocks is due to loss of habitat, not
Not hunting.
overhunting per se.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And so what we're left with now in New Hampshire, we have New England cottontails, small population, on the northwest side of Great Bay, really centered around the Dover-Bellamy area, and the much larger population along the lower Merrimack Valley. In total winter population, that's before they start breeding in the spring, so about right now, we have less than 200 New England cottontails within the entire state. And about 3/4 of those are along the lower Merrimack River in this area. One thing I will point out with New England cottontails, though, is they are originally the only native cottontail type rabbit native to New England. But as a lot of the old fields were reverting to shrubs following the Industrial Revolution, the states had already lost New England cottontails from some large areas, and so they actually brought in eastern cottontails and stocked those. And while they look very similar, eastern cottontails displace New England cottontails. So except for a few places along the Cape, you don't have New England cottontails and eastern cottontails living in the same area. So the main reason, one of the reasons why we only have New England cottontails in these areas now is because certainly along the seacoast and even around Portsmouth, we now have a healthy population of eastern cottontails. And so those areas really aren't suitable for restoring New England cottontails. So if you look at this map, this is where the Great Thicket National Wildlife Refuge concept came from. The areas highlighted in light green are the state's focus areas for recovering New England cottontails within their respective states. But it's a large area. And certainly there's no interest in restoring habitat and all of that. But based on calculations from the New England Cottontail Working Group, in order to recover New England cottontails in New Hampshire, we need to restore an additional about 2,000 acres worth of early shrub habitat. And that was a little bit too much for the states and local town conservation districts to take on their own. And so in New Hampshire, the state and other partners in the New England Cottontail Working Group asked for the Fish and Wildlife Service to contribute. And instead of simply providing some funding from habitat work, to help shore some of the load for conserving lands. And so that was the foundation for creating the Great Thicket National Wildlife Refuge Plan. And that's the same case for the other states. So what we're talking about, we have 5 states, New York through Maine, 10 focus areas. Those are the areas in yellow on the map. And within the focus areas, the Fish and Wildlife Service would acquire relatively small, targeted acreages that are going to benefit first New England cottontails, but also woodcock and the other birds that are struggling. So we can, next. So blowing it up to New Hampshire, we have 2 sites, the Oyster Dover Bellamy and Rollinsford site around Great Bay, and that's actually just across the river from one in Maine. But the primary site, again, where about 3/4 of the New England cottontails are in New Hampshire, is in this area. And the state's focus area is much larger. To keep things efficient, again, my office is in Newburyport, to ensure we can have efficient management. We further consolidated the boundaries, working with the New England Cottontail Working Group to make sure any acquisitions or fee title would be as targeted as possible. And for each of the New Hampshire focus areas, we're looking at maximum acquisition through fee title and easements of 500 acres per focus area. So that's 1,500 total, 500 within each of the focus areas. So if you go to the next one, this is a blow up of the Merrimack Valley North focus area. And the yellow is the outline of the boundary, and if you can't quite read the description, the orange areas are existing conservation lands within the focus area. I have copies of that map. I'll give you 2 after the presentation. Okay. And so what are we talking about? Again, looking at only a few hundred acres, not necessarily having the Fish and Wildlife Service acquisition land as being the core habitat, but thinking about it as corridors to help connect existing wildlife areas, existing town conservation lands, to get as much bang as possible. Because even with Fish and Wildlife, we don't have the resources to acquire much land. And that's not the goal of this plan, okay? Ideally, focusing on wet shrub areas that usually don't grow up into mature forest, simply because conserving those benefits a lot of the other birds I mentioned, and also management requirements are less, because you aren't always fighting to keep trees from growing up and having the area turn into mature forest. Certainly drier old fields are relatively easy to manage too through periodic mowing. We do prescribe burning in some areas, but unless something really fit in well with, say, a wildlife management area where the state was already doing that, it's not realistic for the sort of management we're talking about here. Okay. But certainly forest management, commercial timber cutting to restore early succession habitat would be key. And this is an example from something that happened over in Londonderry. That is on private land, but an example of timber cutting to benefit New England cottontails. Okay. And for background on that, timber cutting, usually it's about 10 years between when you cut the trees and when they reach that prime New England cottontail and woodcock habitat. And it's usually good from about age 10 to about age 17 or 18, and then things start to open up again. Okay, and there would also be some tree planting. There aren't many, fields in this area, certainly any that we would have willing sellers who wanted to sell. So I don't see it being a big management technique here, but when needed, we would also plant shrubs. Okay. One thing we're doing at Great Bay, mentioned earlier about releasing rabbits. Since 2012, we have been taking rabbits that were born into captivity at the Roger Williams Zoo, releasing them into a 1-acre pen at Great Bay National Wildlife Refuge, which is part of the former Pease Air Base, and giving them an opportunity to adjust to living more or less in the wild. We've created a relatively predator-resistant enclosure, and we're also doing some supplemental feeding. But to date, those New England cottontails that have passed through this pen have been released at Bellamy Wildlife Management Area, and we've released over 60 so far. Okay, we're expanding that from a 1-acre pen this spring into 2 7.5-acre pens. If you're looking and seeing the strange concrete areas, that's because it's part of the former weapons storage area. We have old bunkers. It's a highly disturbed site. They pushed up the topsoil and mounted it on top of the bunkers. So it's an easy place to manage for New England cottontails. There is no topsoil. And so it's a hard place for trees to get a foothold anyway. So it lends itself to this sort of management. But we're looking forward to starting that. And going back to examples of Fish and Wildlife Service owning relatively small tracts within suburban industrial type settings, this is the Carner Blue Butterfly easement. It's located in the city of Concord. It's 30 acres, located immediately east
Keep going.
of the airport. It's the area highlighted in yellow. It's managed for the federally endangered Carner Blue Butterfly. Really pretty intensive management. We've cut trees, we're mowing, doing some herbicide work to control invasive species, and even prescribed burning. And again, this is 30 acres located inside of an industrial park. And I think we've been good neighbors so far. So the idea of a national wildlife refuge for the birds and rabbits we're talking about needing to be a large tract of land really isn't necessary. Yeah, So where we are now, we're in the public comment period. It runs through this coming Friday, the 3rd. Next step is going to be to consolidate all of the public comments we've received and essentially combine them into different categories, and then we'll be responding to them in a final land protection plan, incorporating comments and editing that. Our service director in Washington, D.C. will need to approve a finding of no significant impact. That's required, which means that there is no significant impact to the human dimension of this. And finally, the director would approve that, and we would release the final plan and implement the restoration work.
So what does this mean to Litchfield? Are you planning on purchasing properties on Litchfield to set aside for this type of thing? Or does this mean that there would be restrictions placed upon existing property owners, or how's that work?
No restrictions on existing property owners. The New England cottontail is already a state-listed species, and so that wouldn't change with this. As far as this area, the focus area for the lower Merrimack North is about 36,000 acres, and it covers quite a bit of the town of Litchfield. So our maximum cap is 500 acres, looking at purchasing easements and property from willing sellers only after this is approved, not just in the town of Litchfield, but throughout the focus area. So realistically, the town of Litchfield's portion of that is about 25%. And so looking at working with the conservation districts in the states to be as strategic as we can. How can we connect existing conservation areas? The rabbits don't disperse very far. Rivers are big barriers, but even, a quarter mile of developed area can be a barrier. So even, something as narrow as a power line right-of-way or a pipeline right-of-way that's in brushy habitat functions as a pretty good corridor for them.
Now, there's the Musquash area over here
Right.
that connects into Londonderry and everything else. Is that something that you've already looked at, or?
We've been talking to the state about that. They're interested in doing more management for New England cottontails too, so promoting that. USDA and the state so far have restored about 1,000 acres of New England cottontail habitat since it was listed in the state in 2007.
And I do know that the Moores Falls property that's up to the north here, I think that there was some inspection of that property for cottontail habitat. I don't know if it was by the state. Was that by the state, John?
It was, Rockingham County, they did some work there, as well as across from, town called the Muskie Field.
So, okay. So, right now, this will be designated as what? I mean, Litchfield would be part of the designation as a wildlife area, or how?
That area would be within the focus area for the
Okay.
refuge. And essentially, the focus area means that's, the Fish and Wildlife Service could acquire an easement or fee title inside of that area.
Are there any other federal regulations that would come into effect if that happens,
Only for the only on those parcels.
that you
So,
purchase?
yeah, so some, we have, most uses could continue, but we do have some uses, ATV use, people creating trails behind their houses, the back up to it, horseback riding, normally are prohibited.
Okay.
Yeah.
Members of the board have questions?
What's the largest benefit to a town like Litchfield for this to go on? You see bunny rabbits?
You
I
do,
mean-
you do some. It's additional conservation land. A lot of it is focused on wetter areas, so you get some stormwater protection there. But primarily additional conservation land that's good for a spectrum of wildlife. In addition, it's good deer habitat. It's good for woodcock, a lot of birds.
Okay.
Other questions, Steve?
Nope.
Brent? No?
No, I'm all set.
I
Okay.
do have some maps for you.
Okay.
And some additional information. And please also take note of the Fish and Wildlife Services website, where you can find more about the entire area.
Well, while you're here, Joan, or you guys have questions?
I have a question.
Yeah,
I don't know if this was on yet.
Sure.
What about town-owned property? Would you be interested in easements on town-owned property?
Potentially.
Do you buy them?
Depends on how it fits, yes. Well, yeah. Occasionally we have people donate them, but generally it's fair market value.
And if it was a wooded, forested wetland, would you be interested in making it more of a shrub area?
Yes. This is really focused on shrubland.
What's the length of the easement? Is this a permanent easement?
Perpetual.
Perpetual, right?
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Peterson.
Thanks.
Appreciate that.
And I've included copies of my card with that, so if you have any questions, please call or email.
Will do.
Thanks.
Can I get through those, please?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is a mosquito control contract approval.
Just pull it. Pull it, all right. There you go.
The board should have a copy of the contract.
When I looked at the contract, it looked just like last year's contract, right? There's no,
No
I didn't
change.
see any price changes either, looks like it's all the same price.
Same price, no change.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Peterson.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it's basically a duplicate of what we had last year?
Yes, it's been reviewed. It has been reviewed by the Mosquito Control District Committee
It's been reviewed by council, right? Yep.
and also Town Council.
Great.
Anybody have any questions?
Do we need to approve it?
I would say so, yeah.
Authorized me.
Or we can authorize the administrator to sign it if that's what you'd
Okay.
like.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. I'll authorize the town administrator to sign on behalf of the board to approve the contract between Municipal Pest Management Services, Inc. And the town for mosquito control.
Do we have a second to the motion?
Second.
We have a second by Selectman Perry to the motion made by Selectman Lemire. Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 5-0-0. Okay. Right now, we'll open it up to public comment. Are there members of the public who wish to address the board? It's your chance. Hearing none, then we'll close the public comment period and move on. Item 4 on the agenda, the MS 232 form, which is the report of appropriations voted. Troy?
Okay. This form is a requirement to be submitted to the New Hampshire DRA. It reports the gross appropriations approved at our town meeting. You can see that the gross appropriations this year is $5,804,432.
Okay, so I think this just requires us to sign the form. There's not an approval that you need, is there?
That's correct. The forms.
So the forms are in the folder, so if people have a chance to sign them, I know, John, you signed it, I did,
I did.
so,
Kevin did.
okay? And Troy, once you get that, if we could just send a copy to the, or give a copy to Kevin for presentation to the Budget Committee, that would be good. Okay, next item. 2015 Annual Equalization Report. We're at 99.9% equalization value. Troy?
Yeah, I just wanted you to be aware, we received this correspondence from DRA. We did our update last year, so obviously, Avatar did a good job, basically almost at 100% market value.
Sounds good. Okay, 2016 draft budget adjustments. We have something that Troy has put together that we want to go over. So it should be in your folder. Troy, if you want to
All right,
lead the
so-
discussion on this?
So I do want to stress that this is a draft. And primarily the reason is I've not been able to actually sit down and talk to all the department heads. My approach to this was on the assumption that all departments could operate on how we had calculated the default budget back in the fall. And what I've done is we've basically started off with the default budget. I have a bunch of accounts that we've identified that we're aware that there's gonna be some increases, and also aware that there's gonna be some decreases. So the assumption here is that if everyone can live within their default budget, and we calculate in the following increases and decreases, then, we can come in, under, meet the default budget. So if you want, I'll go through real quick and just describe, how where I've come up with the increases and decreases. So in accounting, you're aware that we had a change in personnel. We've calculated out the difference in the wage rate in this period of time that we had no coverage, and we're expecting that we're gonna have a decrease of about $2,500 on that line item. With that change in personnel, there was also changes in health and dental benefits, and we'll see this year we'll have an increase of $11,629 for health and another $672 for dental. IT equipment maintenance, we have a bottom line, discussed this with John, and his default budget is larger than our proposed budget this year. So he is able to defer spending $26,000 from his budget. That's gonna be a big chunk of the money that we plan to use to make up for the difference. Legal services, based on last year's actual cost, we even were anticipating a decrease in this in the proposed budget. I see no reason why we cannot reduce legal services by $5,000. New Hampshire retirement services, due to the fact, again, changes in the accounting department and with the firefighter, because we have a vacant position, we've calculated that to represent about $3,000 in savings as well. Unemployment insurance, we actually have a credit with Primex, with our insurance carrier. So we will not be paying any premiums this year, and that will represent a savings of $3,482. Because we changed our insurance carrier from the property liability trust to Primex, we're gonna have another savings of $1,973. Part-time officers, this represents the SRO officer and the part-time detective. And at this point in time, consulting with the police chief, he didn't have any objection to not filling the part-time detective position at this time. He's utilizing one of the full-time officers. That officer is doing some detective work and doing some police work. It's not resulting in any overtime cost to the department. So, that would represent, this is another big chunk of money where we're trying to make up the deficit of, having the default budget, given the default budget this year. So this represents $30,000.
Does that mean we would defer it for a year?
Well, yeah, that's 1 year.
So that,
I mean, we're already 3 months into the year, Dave.
so it would be not hiring them at all this year?
That's correct. Now, the recruitment, you could start a recruitment process, later in the fall. If you wanted to try to have something, in place for the 1st of January.
Problem is, it's working now. It's just that if they had an injury or anybody that went out, that could change very quickly.
They could.
Okay?
Yeah, that's a good point. We've had changes with our existing personnel, which has resulted in an increase for health insurance and dental. health insurance, because employees have changed from, a single plan to a family plan. That's going to result in an increase of $8,100, and dental another $1,490. Due to the fact that we have the full-time firefighter paramedic position that's been vacant, we've calculated out for the first 3 months the savings that have been realized by, filling that position with other part-time officers, firefighters. Represents about $3,000 of savings. And we're just making assumptions right now we're just making an assumption that when we hire the new full-time firefighter paramedic, that there'll be a family plan for health and dental. Those would be added cost, about $6,600. We know that, based on last year's budget, that we will exceed the hydrants by $2,000. We will exceed street lighting by $2,000. And we're quite concerned about in solid waste, the disposal for demo and our household trash. So we've allocated about $5,000 for demo and solid waste disposal. I will point out to you that, as Dave Mellon pointed out to me, we do have the expendable trust fund that's available if we do exceed the budgeted amount for the disposal cost of these two items. So, not proposing to use that money at this point in time, but that is an area that we could look at later in the year if we had to. Welfare, again, based on last year's expenditure, sort of the direction of the Board of Selectmen and Budget Committee, we were looking to reduce welfare. I think you folks were looking to reduce it a little bit more, but knowing a little bit of activity that we've had in the last 3 months, I'm recommending $5,537 be deferred for this year, to the best of our ability. Obviously, if there's a need, we're required by law to grant that assistance. And in the rec department, we know that we're going to exceed electric by $2,000, and we've already made a commitment to make more chemical toilets available through our facilities this year. So I wanted to maintain that service. And I'm still carrying a cost, an anticipated cost to do the non-union wage increase along with the longevity payments. We're carrying that cost at $30,000. Stormwater, I'm carrying a cost of $10,000. This item, I'll be going to a workshop this week. Hopefully I'll learn a little bit more. But again, the last regional stormwater meeting that I went to, much discussion occurred around the fact that the state, the EPA has still not released their final guidelines, and they continue to be pushed off until later this summer, early fall. I guess I question the fact that if these rules come out sometime late summer, early fall, I'm not sure what the federal government expects us to do in 3 months. I don't know if we really will have cost, and that cost may all probably occur in 2017. But we need to continue to at least plan for it and make ourselves aware of it. So this plan only works, again, if all the departments can live within the default budget that they were granted.
Just one thing as a comment on hydrants. We're obligated by a PUC determination to pay those hydrant costs. So I think going forward on default budgets, that $2,000, which is not included, that you're conditioning as an additional expense, should really be part.
Right.
And I know you didn't know about that, and
No, I think what it was, there's a budgeting error on because of that. Remember the rate adjustment?
yeah, and I think what we ought to do as a board is just make sure that we use what we expect the full cost to be anticipated for the hydrant charges. Because we're obligated to pay that. PUC has ordered that the town will pay that, so. Does the board agree with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Questions on this proposal by Troy? What I'd like to do, if the board's amenable to this, I'd like to get a vote on it, and then Troy can start to take this information and populate it back into the budget so we can finalize the allocations. Questions?
Yeah, like you say, you haven't talked to none of the departments.
Spoke to the police chief, spoke with the IT department, spoke with Jack at DPW. I really just haven't had a chance to connect with the fire chief.
But I mean, there's nothing in there that should be controversial. This is all pretty straightforward from what I can see.
I don't believe there is, but
Right.
I just, for the record, I've not spoken to him about it.
Okay.
And just as a comment, I'm working to try to get some more out of the IT line. The challenge was is we budgeted 3-year renewals, so the 1-year costs we're paying are coming in more expensive. I'm waiting for one more quote, and if I can do, I'll probably come back and give you some more back.
Did we go with 3-year renewals?
Did we go with,
Yeah,
we only
in
did
the
1
budget.
year's in the default. That's all we're
Gotcha,
obligated
because that's
to do.
what was in there, right?
And it's all we're obligated to do anyway for years.
Okay.
So,
Nice job, Mr.
Yeah.
Town Administrator.
I stayed away from highway. I know a lot of folks seem to think that we're gonna have a lot of money there. But, you know, talked to Jack, and even though we didn't have a lot of snowfall this year, we still had a lot of activity.
Yeah.
A lot of times those storms that result in 1.5 inches of snow, but they last for 8 hours, can cost you just as much money as a 1-foot storm event.
yeah, I think we found that sanding and salting is much more expensive than it is plowing.
So, the only thing I do have a concern with, which I think is where Steve was coming from, is the part-time police officer, the detail, the investigator. When Troy and I first discussed this, that was a concern with me as well, so,
I think it's something that you monitor, and, if you could at least get 6 months behind us, so that we could capture 6 months savings, and then, we see where we are with the budget. Maybe
Well, we
it's
only
something that-
budgeted for 6 months.
yeah, the plan, the
No,
budget committee,
I'm saying that we don't start the recruitment process to say, if the board, if we make a determination 6 months into this budget, things are looking good, I got a better handle on where the highway department budget really is gonna end up, then we could say, okay, we feel comfortable now, let's recruit a detective, part-time detective, and we only pick up 6 months of cost opposed to the 30,000 12-month cost.
I mean, I'm gonna reiterate like Brent did. This is a good job. You did a really good job getting all this together. But as Frank had just said, that is my only point of concern is in that position, because it's not uncommon for something to happen where an officer might be out for 10 weeks or 8 weeks, whether it be injury, any of those different things. So I would just hate to rely on all of this. So you may want to just try to have an idea where you could go for a little bit more.
The police chief's aware of that, right?
Yes.
And there was no strenuous objection to it.
No, he offered.
I've had the discussion with the chief as well, and he said, well, we're making do without it right now, and as long as nothing changes,
Yeah.
it shouldn't be a problem, but I'm just saying, we're forecasting for the future.
under perfect conditions.
Exactly.
Right, and understood.
Okay, any other questions on this for Troy? I think as the other board members have said, Troy was a great job, doing this. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to approve.
okay, we have a motion to approve, is there a second?
Check.
Okay,
Did you say?
I thought you hiccuped.
I know, I
I was at the end of the yawn. Come on, game.
Okay, we have a motion by Selectman Lemire, seconded by Selectman Bork. Discussion?
a hiccup by selection.
Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 5-0-0. So we can start to populate this into the, and to make the moves and put that into the budget so that we can get that.
I'll talk to Karen. She started entering default budget numbers last week. She has them all entered, and so I would anticipate that we might receive a financial report at the end of this week.
Okay.
Excellent.
2016 draft action items. So those are action items for the town administrator. So Troy, if you want to
I'll
go over these?
through these, they're not, basically, this is just my first stab at, my awareness of issues that we've been dealing with, the last 6 months. So it's sort of my list of things where I wanna work with the board, between now and, end of the year. We have time before we start getting in the budgets again, so, Chairman Byron recommended that I at least populate a list and that we throw it out there for discussion. This is not prioritized in any manner, it's just really the start. I try to break it up into some categories. So obviously, some of this stuff we're even dealing with this evening. But financial, obviously, we calculate the default budget
Night, Tom.
adjustments, get them approved, we'll have to continue to monitor those. We need to schedule a special town meeting to ratify the tax cap. I've been in touch with legal counsel. There was actually a waiting period following the town election, so there's, I think it's in May. Could be wrong, but as soon as that we could hold the public hearing would be in May. But, obviously we need to make sure we coordinate that, make sure the ad's in the newspaper, and finalize that, the tax cap issue. I put down here quarterly review of financials. In printing that, I wasn't really sure what the past practice was. When I started working here, we kind of jumped right into the budget, so I'm not sure if that's something that we normally do on a monthly basis, or do we do it on a quarterly basis?
I think it's a good idea to do it on a quarterly basis so that it keeps us current on where we're headed. And I would look at mostly you and Kevin to kind of conduct that. As Kevin's the selectman's rep to the budget committee, having him, help with that makes sense. You okay with that, Kevin?
Yeah, that's
Okay, when we were at, discussing warrant articles for the 2016 deliberative session, we were talking about going through all the different funds and accounts that we have and trying to determine which ones are still active, which ones are obsolete, and, really just sort of go through and do some housekeeping. So I just wanted to document that. We decided to pull that off the warrant, but it's still an action item that I want documented. I have a lot better handle on the various funds that we have now, and there's probably some work that can be done there. One of the areas that requires a lot of work on my part to really get up to speed on, and I think it's important for the board to be aware of, is our utility assessments. You're probably aware that the Fairpoint filed an abatement a couple of years ago, and it's been an ongoing filing. I think Eversource is probably has some abatements that they've filed for. We had some activity in the past with Pennachuck Waterworks. We had a correction that we learned about months ago, and in addition to that, they filed for another abatement. And these are significant, there's a significant amount of tax base that we're talking about here, and I don't know what the impacts are, but we need to investigate that and get a good handle on what the potential impacts are. We should be aware of it. We've been talking about the ambulance billing services that have been provided to us by Comstar in the town of Hudson. As you know, the fire chief, myself, Karen White, finance director, we've met with officials from both these entities, and they've offered to invite us at their quarterly meetings. And we plan on continuing to meet and monitor the billing services. Our goal, obviously, is to receive these bills as soon as possible so that we can get invoices out that are less than 90 days old and not 3 years overdue. First step in preparing the 2017 budget would be to come up with a schedule, start to finish, so that we have that all well thought out and well planned out, and we're not up against deadlines, writing warrant articles. And one of the things that, Kevin, I need to talk to you about is making sure that I understand that we are supposed to rotate the deliberative sessions every year, so school goes first, town goes second, and vice versa, and that didn't happen this year. If we want our legal counsel, and not a subcontracted legal counsel, to attend, then we need to make sure we go second this year. So that's a board, that's a discussion with the board. I think that's been the normal practice. I don't know if it's a big concern or not, but
Well, if you go first, it means you choose whatever date you want, so you can go and choose, we could choose whatever weekend we wanted to go.
I know the first weekend, apparently the lawyers in our law firm, they're all committed to, other meetings, so we have to contract with another attorney. But Laura Spector Morgan is available the second, weekend, so we can talk about that. Health and safety, obviously, new issue that's come up in our town is the PFOA issue with the groundwater contamination, ongoing monitoring efforts by New Hampshire DES. We'll obviously need to stay on top of this. Co-bred training, I'd like to work with key personnel, and we can do an online training, probably in this room, making sure that we have, at least half dozen people trained on how to use the co-bred system. Really important. MS4 stormwater management, you've heard me talk about that this evening, you're all aware of it. Just making sure we keep that on our radar. One of the first things that's required, I've never done it before, but is the annual permit application is due, I believe, May 1st. So that'll be something I need to be working on in April. Working with the road agent, preparing that. Darapon, the water usage concerns, one of the things, we had a meeting last year with Pennachuck Waterworks, some school personnel, obviously town, and folks from New Hampshire DES. One of the action items that came out of that meeting was to install water meters at all of our school and town facilities that use irrigation. And that work, I do believe, has been completed. So we'll have to monitor that, that usage and make sure we are below the state standards. There's a daily limit amount that you can use, and that's the purpose of putting the meters in. Policies and procedures. One of the action items, this is to do with the ambulance, but also we have other uncollectible receivables that we have no written policy on. I have draft policies and would like to present to the board fairly soon a policy so that we can address primarily the ambulance outstanding bills. And hopefully, because our auditors have made a finding last year, they'll make a finding again this year, so we can have that policy in place and write off whatever debt we can. And then, as I understand, this board has traditionally, some of these things are required by law, to review policies on an annual basis. I understand we have a general fund policy, investment policy, purchasing policy, fraud policy, conference and travel policy, and the personnel policy. So some of these are, just slowly put them on the agenda and we'll take a look at them. Some of them, the personnel policy is something that, maybe later in the year, as I kind of work with the personnel policy, identify possible changes I'd like to recommend to the board. Need to investigate the personnel file, make sure we have all the employee sign-offs in place for these policies as well. Infrastructure and capital, monitor our 2016 paving projects. Monitor New Hampshire DLT, the Hillcrest Road paving project. We're told that that's going to be overlaid this year, but it's something you need to keep an eye on. Projects and priorities change, and funding can disappear quick. We talked about the developing the capital improvement plan. Impact fees. One of the things that I'd like to be able to identify, I'm not really comfortable in being able to advise the board on how they can expend the impact fees, what the limitations are. And I would like to be able to research that and come back and, you know, present my findings to you so that we can make some decisions on how we can use impact fees in areas that are, you know, really needed right now, and understand the limitations of when you can't use those fees. And obviously, making sure we understand, that everyone understands if we're refunding fees currently, that everyone's aware that we are, and what they can possibly do to spend some of those funds. Fire station feasibility study is, you know, I don't have confirmation on this, but based on the last meeting that we had, when we were just going over the draft report, it did appear that we would be in receipt of a final draft in late March, April. So I suspect that report, you will be seeing that report sometime soon. Wastewater feasibility study, we just received the report. I have scheduled CMA to present the report to the board on April 25th. So I'll be getting the word out to boards and committees and you know, businesses here in town, try to spread the word through media or whatever, so we can get people aware of that. Under committees, establish agricultural committee. I understand that the town meeting approved the creation of agricultural committee in 2015. We've not taken any action on this, so.
I thought we asked the Conservation Commission to do that.
We have tried to solicit members, and I think it's come up at times in the Conservation Commission. Who is the selectman's rep to the Concom? If you can bring that up again, see.
Okay, and one of the things, we talked about this, probably back in January, was the Safe Routes to School Committee. Just due to town meeting and everything, I've not really done much with it. I've reached out to the school once or twice and haven't heard back. So I need to give them another poke, because it's my understanding that we do need to have a school representative on this committee. But that needs to get established here quickly, because there was limited grant funding available for those planning grants. Litchfield Community Television. We had discussion about this, and you know, there's been discussion about dissolving the committee, sort of creating a department. And
My
I
recollection,
had legal counsel review some of the documents that that we had, and they came back saying, you know, really, the document didn't really seem to make any sense if you weren't gonna have a committee. If it was gonna be a department, you really just should have a mission statement for the department with appropriate job descriptions.
well, I
So I
think,
don't know where this is all gonna go, but, you know, it's something that,
I think the last thing in my recollection, if the board has another idea, correct me, but I thought that we had sent Dick Pentheny away with the document that he had. He had brought a document to the board, but I thought it was overly complex and not necessarily what the board wanted. So I think Dick was supposed to work on that and then come back to the board. Is that my misunderstanding where we left that?
That's how I
and
recall
I
it.
think the board even requested that we share it with legal counsel for thoughts.
Yeah,
And we did that, and she came back with, yeah, this is way overcomplicated, and you don't need this, so,
I think the challenge is the document's meant to be a guiding for the department,
yeah.
because it is, I mean, it defines the roles and responsibilities, plus, you know, their sort of their goal, right, their mission statement. Was that feedback given to Dick, though? I don't remember if we did do that from legal counsel.
Yeah, I shared the.
so
email that I received,
I'd
so-
suggest that we get Dick back in so we can get everybody on the same track
Yeah,
again.
I think just to make sure we know what we're doing before we waste a lot of time, and there's, you know, there's still a lot of issues and questions with
Okay.
our community television. I say that in a positive way. They do amazing work, and I just wanna make sure that we have everything in writing and everyone clearly understands their roles and responsibilities. Pat Jewett Award, I threw this on here. and I just throw out those comments, do we keep it informal? Do we establish a committee, so that once a year, we have a few, volunteer members of the community that work on this and, work with the Board of Selectmen to make it happen.
Didn't we establish a committee?
It was Laura
We
Gandy.
did it for like this year,
Yeah, it wasn't anything
but it's
permanent, I
nothing,
don't think.
formal, and that's my question is, do we wanna really have a
But
formal
one of the,
standing committee?
one of the goals with carrying it one more year was to establish the process so that it could actually just run on its own with some leadership of just the town office. Go out and announce it, get the solicitation, and then somebody makes a decision, right, based on the recommendations.
It happens, the timing of it, it's at a busy time of the year for us, but, we'll come back, quick. Laura Gandia did a tremendous job, coordinating it all, making it happen, she did a great job. So, throw it out there for thought. Let's see here. All right, so then, I just threw out there miscellaneous, sign the union contract, we did that this evening. Recreation mowing bids, I think that's gonna be resolved. So John will give you an update. I think that'll be resolved this week, hopefully, it sounds like. The Great Thicket presentation, you have to understand that this information about the Great Thicket's been kind of circulating around the emails for a while. No one really paid attention to it until, last week, we realized that, the federal agencies really wanted to meet with selectmen and make us aware of this, so that's done. Just making sure we stay on top of all the DRA forms, so that when it comes time to set our tax rate, this is for town forms and school forms, so that we don't have a delay in the setting of our tax rate. So that's something that I plan on continuing to monitor. And the other thing I want to accomplish this summer is reviewing all the town hall job descriptions. No, I just mean town hall from, not the police department, but this side of the building. Making sure those descriptions are in place, are up to date, reflect the current practices.
So it should be fairly up to date, they were done this
It's
recently.
been, a little bit of mixture, so.
Okay, are there any
That's
items?
me. That's
there-
not any input from you folks.
Are there any comments or items that the board thinks should be on here that aren't, or?
You guys got them?
I think overall I did.
Okay, so what we'll do then is we'll use this as a list, and we'll just update this periodically to try and where we've come and where we're going, that type of thing. Does that make sense, Troy?
Mhm.
Keep you focused.
Keep them focused, give them something to do,
Good luck.
yeah.
True.
Well, what'll happen is something that's not even on here will come up.
It will. But I just wanted to make sure that you're all in agreement with these items. These are items, you've heard of them, you're aware of them, you're in agreement with them. Because I don't want to be working on
Plus
something.
anything that comes up.
Well, I know that, but I don't want to be working on something and you folks are like, why are you even doing this? We never have,
Well, the good thing is most of your list is quick, short, not too involved.
Right.
And you're still gonna find that half of those aren't gonna get done because of everything else that will come through.
Because at the end of the day, it is about the day-to-day business, which is the most time consuming.
Okay. Anybody else, everybody are good with this?
Yep.
Okay. So let's go on to the next item then, which is administrator reports. Troy?
Yeah.
Not that you have anything else to revert?
report this week.
Okay, selectmen reports. I'm waiting
I'll
eagerly.
go last.
I'll just go, the rec commission, they met, last Tuesday, sort of shorthanded, they did their bid, basically the mowing maintenance bid opening. The bids, the proposals were all over the place, they didn't necessarily fall, the committee had decided to meet on Saturday, which I believe they've actually officially rejected all of them, or at least reached out to all of them to have them re-scope it. I believe they're getting all that back in by Wednesday, Troy, is that what I saw in the email?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they'll make a decision shortly afterwards.
So how was that, they went through all the bids, and then they were meeting on Saturday, and Saturday
So-
they didn't pick it?
No, so what happened was when they were going through they opened the bids, announced the bids, right? And then what happened was we had bidders or proposals for 1 year only, not the 2 years originally asked this bid spec. We had three-year bids versus the 2 year bids. There was a lot of confusion, so the board, the commission decided to reach back out to everybody and say, look, this is not what we wanted. Give us your best for, I think they came back and said 2 years. I wasn't able to, I ended up getting called to work on Saturday, so I wasn't able to get here on Saturday morning at 9:30. But based on the email threads I saw, it sounds like that's what they decided to do. And they'll make a decision. They're on a deadline clock. They got facilities to start taking care of, and they've got to get these things done. But the nice thing is almost all the bidders are prepared to start right away. And I think, the comments I heard, they all understood, so.
They look like they're good qualified bidders,
Yeah.
all 6 of them.
Anything else, John?
Nope, that's all I did.
Steve?
Planning board had a meeting, went through some planning board stuff, working on the,
So excited, isn't it?
working on the master plan. The next meeting's gonna do a little more on the master plan, because everybody's got little homework projects to bring back to, try to streamline it through a little, instead of sitting in a meeting, going through each section one at a time. Other than that, meeting is next week.
Now, I did mention to Tom when he was here, just to make you aware, the governor has just signed a bill that came through the House that changes the, what do they call it, auxiliary housing, accessory housing specifications, and requires certain criteria for accessory housings now, in terms of square feet and all that fun stuff.
Oh, yeah. yeah.
Why they have a bill like, I have no idea.
Yeah, we can't control it anymore, so
Right,
we've lost some of our controls as a town
right.
for accessory dwelling. We're now being forced to have it whether we want it or not. Things like
It doesn't
that.
force you to have it, it just says that if you are gonna have it.
You have to allow it.
You have to have so many feet. I don't think you have to allow it. I'm not sure.
Well, because we already have it, yes, it's now gonna be capped, I think at 1,000 square feet, where we said it was 800.
Yeah, something like that. I
Now
don't know,
it's, now it
voted,
can't be more than 1,000 or something like that.
I voted against it, but that's just me.
And, speaking of which, there was also an applicant in the last time, and it was about a piece of property that abuts Pagewood Oval, that it was a conceptual plan for 42, I think it was 42 units of, like townhouse units. So that would fall into the affordable housing type of atmosphere, multifamily type of atmosphere. And there was also a plan submitted for the other land that was behind it, which is the tract that is behind Page and adjacent to Cutler Road, which would be another, that was 42 homes, the townhomes was 48.
Wow.
So there's a potential for a pretty big project to be going on.
Okay, anything else? Brent?
Conservation meeting next Thursday, I'll be attending that meeting.
Okay. And last but not least, Mr. Bork.
So I attended my first budget meeting. For those who are watching, it's very eventful. So first I'd like to recognize, we had a longtime member of the budget committee actually resigned from the budget committee, so I don't know how long he was part of that, but a very
It's
long
been on
time.
and off.
Which is Bill Spencer, so, I personally just want to thank him and say thank you for all the years that you gave the town. So he is no longer with the budget committee. So moving forward with the budget committee, what the majority decided, well, I can't really say the majority decided because it was split, but what happened with that is what we're actually going to do on the next budget committee on the 21st is have people come in and submit their resumes, and I think they need to have them in by the 8th of April, and we're looking to replace Bill Spencer. So what we're going to do is interview people the night of the 21st and make a decision that night as far as who will come in, and it's a one-year term is what's going to happen.
No.
So
I guess the question, why would they do that? We just had an election and where
that
there was
that was
another candidate that would.
that was part of the talk that actually happened, but you know, a couple people looked at it in the sense of, you know, when they were voting for two candidates. If we knew there was gonna be three candidates, or three positions that were open, the votes may have went a different way. So that's sort of half and half were on your side and half were on the other side, so that this is where it decided to come to, where it came to, but, so anyway, that's what happened there. You know, they're gonna be, we're looking to set the calendar up for this budget year, so with the exception of that, that was pretty much it, but it's pretty eventful, so if you haven't watched it, take a chance to watch it if you get that chance.
Was it entertaining?
It was very entertaining.
I only caught the first half because I was downloading and uploading to YouTube, so I didn't get to watch the whole thing yet, so. Ended up watching the school meeting more than, because I was.
Who's the chair of the school board?
Brian Bork.
Oh, is he still?
Yep, and then
Oh.
Derek is vice chair.
Oh, okay, I didn't
Since
know
you
that.
also said that, I did forget something, I'll let you say that, just so people are aware. Another thing that came up in the budget committee was, help me out. The conflict,
Oh, you mean
yeah.
the,
Yeah, there's a few members on the board who think there's a conflict of interest because you have a husband and wife on the board, one representing the school board and one representing the town side of it. So there was discussion on that. What I had said personally is that the people, you know, we hear the people. What I said was, you know, if people truly have an issue and they think that it is a conflict, they need to come out or they need to reach out. You know, at this point, you know, people say that, you know, there's a lot of people who are upset with this, but we just haven't seen the people who are upset. So I would ask, you know, if people have issue with this, they need to come out and express their concern, because at this point.
What is
The community, yeah, the community voted
Right.
those individuals in.
I
There
agree
was
with
total
you.
conflict.
I agree,
It-
I agree with you.
And the only, there's no, I mean, my opinion, obviously, but the representative of the school board, first off, the one that elected to the budget committee is representing the community, not the town. They represent the residents of the community in the budget committee.
Right,
That's how she was elected.
correct.
The conflict as far as the school board member who sits, that person's representing the school board, he's not representing his vote, and I don't see where there's a conflict. He's not, that person's not making his own decisions.
And like I mentioned.
agree with you, John.
Yeah,
To
it's
this-
weird.
To our chair earlier, there's no state law against a husband and wife team serving the town. If there was, we'd have
A lot of problems.
a lot of problems.
We're not married.
No, not anymore.
So to be clear, the school board chair is also sitting on the budget committee
Correct.
as representation to the school board.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That has happened.
I don't know that I would do that, but.
Right.
Oh.
And
I think the
Whatever.
challenge.
It's not illegal.
Yeah, it's not
It's
illegal.
not illegal, no.
And remember that the person who's sitting on that budget committee as a rep is representing the board's decision. That's not a free-thinking spot. It's not a free-thinking spot.
Yeah, it is.
Not when
So you're
they're
saying
not-
so you're saying a robot could fill the position exactly
No,
the same?
what I'm saying is when they're sitting there, supporting the school board's recommendations, they're supporting the school board recommendations, not supporting their own.
I understand that, but there's also other avenues that they have to participate in the meeting. And if you're saying that they're only gonna represent the school board, then that means they should only be there for school board issues and/or a robot could fill the
Just
position.
to further clarify this, there was one member of the budget committee who did reach out to me as a state representative, asking me what state level could be done about this. And I've sent him back information. The board has that information. You can do with it as you want. The bottom line on it is I also sent it to the selectmen's rep for the board, as well as to the board chairs, Chairman Couture. So they all have that, and they can, I'm sure, figure themselves out of whatever they want to do. This is an issue that's a budget committee issue. It's got nothing to do with the town.
So that was it.
And I agree
It was
100,
entertaining.
and I agree 100%. There's nothing illegal. But, so be it. Anything else, Kevin?
Nope, that is it, thank you, sir.
John?
No, I was gonna say, which husband and wife team ever agree on anything when it comes to money? Let's just go there. As long
Very
as it
true,
don't-
John, very true.
Well, I think, gentlemen, if you just envision, no, I don't want to go there.
Yeah, don't.
Anyways. So, that should be it. Any other business under selectmen reports? Hearing none. Items moved from consent, there are none. There are no other items that have been requested for business, other business? Unless somebody's come up with something in the meantime? No?
Nope.
Okay, then, the next thing that we have is a non-public session. So make a motion to go into non-public session for RSA 91A3, Roman 2A, compensation. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion made by Selectman Byron, seconded by Selectman Lemire. Roll call vote,
Yes.
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 and yes. So we will only be coming out of the non-public session to adjourn. And please stand by for the next meeting of the Board of Selectmen, which will be the 11th of April. In the meantime, everybody have a good evening. We'll see you later.